Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a wealthy lady named Mrs. Johnson. She was a widow and the owner of a grand mansion that was the envy of the village. Mrs. Johnson was known for her love of jewelry, especially her diamond necklace, which was worth a fortune. One morning, Mrs. Johnson woke up to find that her beloved diamond necklace was missing. She searched the entire house but couldn't find it. She immediately called the village police to report the theft. The village police arrived at the mansion and began their investigation. The police interviewed everyone who had been in the mansion the previous night, including the housekeeper, the butler, and the gardener. They also questioned the neighboring houses to see if anyone had seen or heard anything suspicious. However, no one had seen anything out of the ordinary. The police noticed that the window in Mrs. Johnson's bedroom was open, but there were no signs of forced entry. They searched the area around the window and found footprints leading away from the mansion. The footprints appeared to be those of a man. The police followed the footprints and found a man named John, who lived in the neighboring village. John was known for his criminal activities, but the police couldn't find any evidence that linked him to the theft. They released him, but they continued to investigate. Days turned into weeks, and the police were no closer to solving the case. Mrs. Johnson had lost all hope of ever finding her diamond necklace. However, one day, a young girl named Alice, who worked in the local bakery, came forward and said that she had found the diamond necklace. Alice explained that she had been walking home from work when she noticed something shiny in a nearby bush. She had gone to investigate and found the diamond necklace. Alice had recognized the necklace from the posters that had been put up all over the village, and she immediately returned it to Mrs. Johnson. The police were ecstatic to hear that the necklace had been found, but they were still puzzled as to how it had ended up in the bush. They decided to question Alice further, and it was then that she revealed that she had seen someone running away from the mansion on the night of the theft. Alice described the person she had seen as a tall man with a long beard, but she couldn't give any more details. The police began to investigate once again, and this time, they found a clue that had been missed earlier. They found a piece of torn cloth on the fence that surrounded Mrs. Johnson's mansion. The cloth was similar to the clothing worn by the gardener. The police questioned the gardener, who initially denied any involvement in the theft. However, when presented with the evidence, he broke down and confessed. He revealed that he had taken the diamond necklace, but he had hidden it in the bush because he couldn't sell it due to the high level of publicity around the theft. The police were able to retrieve the necklace, and Mrs. Johnson was overjoyed to have it back. The gardener was arrested, and justice was served. From that day on, Mrs. Johnson made sure to keep her valuable possessions safe and secure. The village was no longer troubled by thefts, and everyone lived happily ever after. However, the mystery of the diamond necklace theft left a lasting impression on the villagers. Rumors started to spread about the identity of the tall man with the long beard that Alice had seen running away from the mansion. Some villagers suspected that he was a professional thief who had been hired to steal the necklace, while others believed that he was a local resident who had fallen on hard times. Despite the rumors, the police were never able to identify the tall man with the long beard. However, his sighting inspired the police to conduct a more extensive search in the surrounding areas. They discovered that several other robberies had taken place in the neighboring villages, which had gone unnoticed until now. The police department of the village joined forces with the police of the neighboring areas to investigate the burglaries. After weeks of investigation, the team was able to identify the tall man with the long beard as a notorious thief, who was responsible for several robberies in the area. He was finally arrested and brought to justice, which led to a significant decrease in criminal activities in the area. The villagers were grateful for the police department's efforts, and they felt safer knowing that the culprit was behind bars. The disappearance of the diamond necklace had led to a significant breakthrough in solving other criminal cases in the area. The police had become more vigilant and had started working together to fight crime. The villagers felt a sense of unity, and they appreciated the efforts of the police to keep their community safe. Mrs. Johnson had become an inspiration to the villagers, as she had shown strength and resilience during the difficult times. She had never given up hope of finding her diamond necklace and had kept the faith that justice would be served. Her attitude had encouraged the villagers to be more optimistic and to trust in the power of hope. The disappearance of the diamond necklace had brought about a positive change in the village. The villagers had learned to work together, trust each other, and to appreciate the little things in life. They had overcome their fear of crime and had learned to appreciate the efforts of the police department. The village had transformed into a safer and more prosperous community, where the residents looked out for each other and worked together to achieve common goals. The disappearance of the diamond necklace had been a significant turning point for the village, and it had brought about a positive change that had a lasting impact on the community. The mystery of the diamond necklace theft had been solved, but the impact of the case was felt for years to come. The village had become a more prosperous and safer place, and the residents continued to work together to achieve common goals. Months had passed since the tall man with the long beard had been apprehended, and life had settled into a peaceful routine for the village. However, one day, a new mystery presented itself. Mrs. Johnson had received an anonymous note in her mailbox, which read, "I know where your diamond necklace is. Meet me at midnight at the abandoned factory on the outskirts of the village, and I'll return it to you." Mrs. Johnson was stunned by the message and immediately notified the police. The police were skeptical but decided to investigate the abandoned factory, which had been empty for several years. They found nothing out of the ordinary and concluded that it was probably a prank or an attempt to extort money from Mrs. Johnson. However, Mrs. Johnson was not convinced and decided to investigate the matter further. She remembered that the tall man with the long beard had spoken of a hidden treasure that he had hidden somewhere in the village. She decided to conduct her investigation and started searching for clues. She visited the places where the tall man had been seen and asked around for any information that could help her solve the mystery. Days turned into weeks, and Mrs. Johnson had no luck in finding any clues. She was about to give up when she received another anonymous note in her mailbox. It read, "You're on the right track, Mrs. Johnson. Keep searching, and you'll find what you're looking for." Mrs. Johnson was determined to solve the mystery and decided to continue her search. One day, she remembered a conversation she had overheard between the tall man and another person. They had talked about a hidden room in the abandoned factory, where the tall man had hidden the treasure. Mrs. Johnson realized that this could be the clue she had been searching for and decided to investigate the abandoned factory again. She searched the factory thoroughly and found a hidden room behind a false wall. Inside the room, she found a large safe, which was locked. She realized that this was probably where the tall man had hidden the stolen treasure, including her diamond necklace. Mrs. Johnson decided to call the police and have them investigate the safe. The police arrived, and after several attempts, they were finally able to crack the safe. Inside, they found a large collection of stolen goods, including jewelry, antiques, and cash. They also found Mrs. Johnson's diamond necklace, which had been missing for months. The police were amazed by Mrs. Johnson's persistence and determination to solve the mystery. They praised her for her bravery and encouraged her to continue her search for clues in the future. The mystery of the hidden treasure had been solved, and the villagers were once again amazed by Mrs. Johnson's resilience and courage. She had shown the villagers that anything was possible if they had the determination and courage to pursue their goals. The village had become a better place because of Mrs. Johnson's perseverance and the police's diligence in pursuing justice. The villagers felt safer knowing that the criminals were being caught, and justice was being served. Mrs. Johnson had become a hero in the eyes of the villagers, and they looked up to her with admiration and respect. The mystery of the hidden treasure had been solved, but the impact of Mrs. Johnson's actions would be felt for years to come. The village had become a more resilient and determined community, and the residents continued to work together to achieve their common goals. The mystery had brought them together, and they were stronger for it. As news of Mrs. Johnson's discovery spread throughout the village, the people began to see her in a new light. She was no longer just the quiet, unassuming widow who kept to herself. She was now a hero, a symbol of the community's resilience in the face of adversity. The village began to hold her in high regard, and many looked to her for guidance and inspiration. Mrs. Johnson, for her part, was humbled by the attention and the responsibility that came with it. She knew that she had to continue to set a good example and work to make the village an even better place to live. She decided to use the money that had been recovered from the hidden safe to fund community projects, such as a new playground for the children and a community garden for all to enjoy. She also worked with the police to set up a neighborhood watch program, which would help keep the village safe from future crimes. In the end, the village became a shining example of what a community could achieve when they worked together. The people became more united, and the sense of pride and ownership of their village grew stronger. Crime rates dropped significantly, and the village became a much safer place to live. Mrs. Johnson continued to be an inspiration to the people of the village, and she was loved and respected by all. Her determination and courage had brought the community together, and they were all better for it. She had turned what could have been tragedy into an opportunity to make the village a better place. Years later, Mrs. Johnson passed away, but her legacy lived on. The community continued to thrive, and her name became synonymous with courage, determination, and community spirit. She would always be remembered as the woman who solved the mystery of the hidden treasure and who had helped bring the village together.